The Prince and the Pauper. In a forgotten, foul-smelling corner of London, within a tangle of dilapidated houses known as Offal Court, a boy named Tom Canty was born into a life of poverty. His family was large and always hungry. His father, a cruel man with a heavy hand, and his grandmother, equally harsh, made his home a place of fear. Yet, Tom possessed a secret, vibrant inner life, nurtured by a kind old priest who taught him to read and write. He devoured old books, his imagination soaring far beyond the grimy alleyways, dreaming of the grace, splendor, and kindness of royal life. More than anything, he yearned to one day see a real prince with his own eyes. In the magnificent, sprawling halls of Westminster Palace, another boy was born on that very same autumn day. This was Edward Tudor, the long-awaited Prince of Wales and heir to the English throne. He was wrapped in silks and satins, attended by a legion of servants who catered to his every whim. But for all his privilege, the prince was often lonely. He was a prisoner in a gilded cage, longing to shed his heavy robes, escape his endless lessons, and run barefoot through the mud with other boys, free from the crushing weight of his royal duties. One summer morning, Tom wandered much farther from home than usual, his feet carrying him through a labyrinth of streets until he found himself standing before the breathtaking spectacle of Westminster Palace. He pressed his face against the gleaming golden gates, utterly captivated by the sight of the prince playing in the manicured garden. When a sentry roughly shoved Tom away, the prince's voice rang out, sharp and clear. "How dare you treat a poor lad so? He has done no harm." To the guard's astonishment, Prince Edward ordered Tom to be brought inside. Inside the prince's opulent private chambers, the two boys stood in stunned silence, staring at each other. The resemblance was uncanny. They were as alike as two peas in a pod, with the same hair, the same eyes, the same features. It was as if they were looking into a mirror. "What is your name?" the prince finally whispered in awe. "Tom Canty, sir," he replied, his voice trembling. For hours they talked, each fascinated by the other's world, the prince enthralled by Tom's tales of freedom and play, and Tom mesmerized by the prince's descriptions of courtly life. A mischievous idea sparked in Prince Edward's mind. "Let us trade clothes," he suggested excitedly. "I wish to feel what it is like to be you, if only for an hour. You shall stay here and enjoy my comforts, and no one will be the wiser." Tom, hesitant but thrilled, agreed. They quickly swapped the prince's fine silks for Tom's coarse rags. As he finished dressing, the prince noticed a dark bruise on Tom's hand. Consumed by a sudden, righteous fury, he stormed out of the chamber, vowing to find and punish the guard who had dared to harm his new friend. The guards at the gate, however, saw only a beggar boy in filthy rags. They roared with laughter when he declared himself the Prince of Wales. "Here's the little madman back again," one jeered, and without a second thought they threw him out of the palace gates into the street. Before he could even get his bearings, a boisterous, jeering mob swept him away, their taunts and mockery ringing in his ears as they paraded the mad little beggar who claimed to be their future king. Meanwhile, back in the lavish chamber, Tom was seized with a paralyzing terror. When he tried to explain the misunderstanding, the nobles and servants who entered simply smiled indulgently, believing their beloved prince had fallen into a strange madness. They bowed deeply, addressed him as "Your Highness," and attended to his every need. Tom, seeing the disbelief in their eyes and fearing for his very life if the truth were discovered, realized he had no choice but to swallow his protests and play the part of the prince. The real prince, Edward, was eventually found by Tom's cruel father, John Canty, who mistook him for his own son and dragged him back to the squalor of Offal Court. No one there believed his frantic claims of royalty. They were met only with blows and starvation. That night, bruised and heartbroken, he managed to escape with the help of a noble-hearted, down-on-his-luck soldier named Miles Hendon. Though Miles believed the boy was simply a well-spoken madman, he took pity on him and vowed to be his protector. Miles Hendon, true to his word, became the boy's steadfast guardian. They traveled the English countryside together, facing hunger, cold, and constant danger. For the first time, Edward witnessed the crushing poverty and brutal injustice that plagued his kingdom. He saw families starving while the rich feasted, and honest men punished for petty crimes born of desperation. His heart ached for his people, and a deep resolve began to form within him. Their journey was fraught with peril. They fell in with thieves and ruffians, and were even taken in by a mad hermit who, upon learning the boy claimed to be the king's son, tried to harm him. Through every trial, Miles Hendon stood as a loyal shield, his sword ever ready to defend the boy he called his little king. From these hardships, Edward began to understand the true strength and resilience of the common folk he was born to rule. Back at the palace, a hush fell over the court as grave news arrived. King Henry VIII was dead. The lords and ladies immediately turned to Tom Canty, the pauper boy they believed to be their prince. He was now, to his utter horror, the King of England. The weight of the crown, the future of an entire nation, suddenly rested upon his trembling shoulders. He was more frightened than he had ever been in his life. Despite his fear, Tom's gentle heart and the simple wisdom of his upbringing guided him. When he was asked to preside over the court, he listened with common sense and acted with mercy. He saved a woman and her young child from being executed for a minor theft and pardoned a man accused of a crime he could not possibly have committed. The court whispered amongst themselves, marveling that the mad prince was proving to be surprisingly wise and just. Miles and Edward finally reached their destination, Hendon Hall, Miles's ancestral home. But a terrible shock awaited them. Miles's wicked younger brother, Hugh, had conspired to have Miles declared dead, stealing his lands, his title, and his intended bride. When Miles confronted him, the villainous Hugh had both the true heir and the young prince arrested and thrown into the local prison. In the cold, damp prison, Edward was exposed to the worst of his kingdom's cruelty. He witnessed people being whipped, branded, and put in stocks for crimes as small as stealing a loaf of bread. His resolve hardened into steel. He vowed that when he reclaimed his throne he would rule not just with power, but with the compassion and mercy he had learned so painfully during his time as a pauper. After their release, thanks to the help of an old loyal servant, Miles and Edward raced towards London. They arrived to find the city in a frenzy of celebration. It was Coronation Day. Banners flew from every building, and the streets were a sea of cheering people, all gathered to witness the grand procession for the new king, Tom Canty. The magnificent procession snaked its way towards Westminster Abbey. Trumpets blared and the crowd roared its approval for the boy in royal robes whom they believed was their king. Small and ragged, Edward fought his way through the throng, his voice hoarse from shouting, "I am the prince! Make way for the true King of England. Let me pass." But his cries were lost in the joyous noise. Inside the hallowed halls of Westminster Abbey, the Archbishop of Canterbury raised the heavy, jewel-encrusted crown of St. Edward, preparing to place it on Tom Canty's head. At that precise, solemn moment, a small, determined figure burst through the great doors. "I forbid it," Edward's voice echoed through the cavernous space. "I am the king." The abbey erupted in chaos. The nobles stared, bewildered, at the two identical boys, one in rags, the other in royal robes. Who was the true king? Before the guards could seize the intruder, Tom Canty, his face filled with immense relief, slid from the throne and was the first to kneel. "He is the king," he announced, his voice clear and certain. To settle the matter, a wise old lord proposed a test. He asked Edward about the location of the Great Seal of England, a vital royal artifact that had gone missing shortly before the old king's death. "I know where it is," Edward sighed confidently, and described a hidden compartment in his chamber wall. He then turned to Tom. "And what did you use it for?" Tom, remembering his brief time with the heavy object, replied honestly, "To crack nuts." At this simple, truthful answer, a wave of understanding swept the court. They finally believed. And so, Edward Tudor was crowned the rightful King of England. His first acts were to reward the loyal Miles Hendon with titles and lands, and to make Tom Canty his chief advisor, a position the king's ward held with honor for the rest of his life. King Edward VI never forgot the lessons he learned as a pauper. He ruled with a kindness, wisdom, and mercy that his kingdom had never known, forever changing England for the better.